Thank you. Thank you. I have just learned how to use these things. Green means on. Thank you. So if we could start by going around the room and introducing ourselves. I'll start here. Councilmember Davis.
Councilmember Davis, Debbie Davis. Thank you. Hi.
Turn on your microphones.
Kathy Watanabe.
Hi, I'm Pat Kolstad, the world's nicest council member.
To follow that. Bianca Wilshock, lone committee member, and apparently the only one present of the committee.
Great.
Calleja, officer.
Carlos Ascona, Housing Inspector.
Welcome.
Jonathan Veach, Housing Division Manager.
Jonathan.
Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development.
And I'm Kathy Flood. I'm the staff analyst and staff liaison for the Loan Committee.
Be welcome.
Brian Doyle, City Attorney.
Nadine Nader, Assistant City Manager.
Pat Mahan, City Council.
Teresa O'Neill, City Council.
Thank you. Thank you again all for coming and joining us today. I hope that you find the food okay and be sure to help yourself for more. And hopefully Carmen will be joining us soon. And
Father Mike.
And Father Mike. Yes. I'm going to, as soon as Teresa takes a bite, I'm going to have her talk about what's going on in the Loan Rehabilitation Committee. And then we can talk about what the issues are and how we can help with anything that's happening and going on in the committee, and where what the pros and cons of what's going on, and how we can help in the future. Sorry, that didn't come out right, but go ahead, Teresa.
Well, I'll just say a few words, and then Kathy and Jonathan are much more expert, and obviously, you know, this is a profession, and then perhaps we can talk about, because Eric and Carlos are both kind of new to the team, so we might be able to go over their roles. So this committee, as Mayor knows, is that so it's myself and Bianca, and the two missing committee members, who I'm sure are on their way, where the staff brings to us loan applications from residents of Santa Clara who are low income and need to have repairs done to their home and don't have a really viable other means to have their homes repaired. And we get the funds from the federal government, from the Housing and Urban Development Department. And we always hear about CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, and then there's the home program. And we used to use a lot of those money. We use some of those monies when with the evenings like tonight, when we have like Bill Wilson Center or Live Oak Day Center or Project Sentinel, all those groups that receive some funding from the city. Those are also CDBG monies, but these funds we use to be able to enter into loan agreements with residents that are not paid back until usually, you know, for a long period of time until the home is sold. And the city helps them manage the construction project to make their homes more habitable. And I think one of the things I think the other committee members could speak to also is it's, you know, and I see a picture up here, it's rather heartwarming to see sometimes or sad when you see what the conditions that some of our neighbors are living in because they don't have the means to maintain their homes. And so it's really nice that we're able to do this as part of a service through our tax dollars to really kind of change the quality of their life. And one of the things the committee does, it looks at those recommendations. We've been spending time looking at the policies and procedures. We've gone through some reviews with the Housing and Urban Development Department. We've had some audits. We've had to make some process changes. We've had to do, you know, frankly, some cleanup on how we were handling things. And I think everybody's very frank about that and wants to make sure that we can improve. And so I think particularly the committee members that have gone through the program or been clients of the program are able to give some insights and some thoughts to the staff about what we might be able to do to make this even a better program for members of the community. And so the other, you know, the funds that we used to use, the home funds, but because with the cost of housing, we can no longer qualify for that. But we instead are using those funds to do the tenant-based rental assistance, so we can help other people in Santa Clara be able to stay in their homes, pay their rent, so that, you know, the number one way to prevent homelessness is to make sure, to fight homelessness is to make sure that nobody is evicted or is out on the street, So we do a lot of good things in that program, but perhaps Jonathan or Andrew or Kathy might want to give a little bit more of an overview. And Jonathan, Andrew, this was a really good choice that you made, because Jonathan he's brought in some really good ideas about how we might be able to do things differently, how we could better leverage the funds, so that we have more money that we can put out in the community. So I've really appreciated, it's when you bring, when somebody from the outside comes in, sometimes, they have a new outlook. And, so I think it's been very helpful. And he's brought a lot to our committee and the program. And so if Jonathan or Kathy want to talk a little bit.
Sorry, particularly about the demand that's out there now and how our supply of funds actually meets that demand, and where we're short in many cases, and how we are meeting those demands. Thank you.
Do you want me to start? Okay. So I think, thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. One of the points you made was about the use of home funds in prior iterations of the program. And when we made the transition from home to CDBG, we had an issue of a lack of funding, really, because CDBG has a lot more uses. It's more flexible in its use. And so it was essentially the rehab program was competing with a lot of other programs for funds, whereas when it was funded by home, it was primarily. And so we've been in a rebuild of the program ever since we transitioned from home to CDBG. In this year's budget, we've expanded the funding for CDBG significantly, or for NCIP, I should say, with CDBG funds. So in the prior year, we allocated something like $400,000 for rehab. This year, it's close to $800,000 or more, so more than doubled the program. And so we've made a conscious decision to expand the NCIP program, and part of that is staffing. So we hired Carlos, who's our new housing inspector, and he's been doing this job for a long time in the city of San Jose. And also Eric, who's our new housing development officer, and has many years of experience working with HUD administration and HUD grants. And so we've really solidified our HUD administration team. And that was really to kind of fill a gap from a compliance risk perspective, making sure that we're administering the money efficiently, but also not risking the loss of any of those funds, like has happened in the past. So capacity and staffing was a first step. Getting the budget approved and expanding the funding is a second step. And then Kathy can talk a little bit about marketing, but we've always had really strong demand for this program, especially from our elderly populations. And so a lot of the work focuses on accessibility upgrades to the home. The reason, I should say, the reason we really want to expand the NCIP program is for a couple reasons. One, it's generally a very well-received program by the public. It's very visible, so the improvements to the homes are visible. They add a lot of value, especially, like I mentioned, for accessibility upgrades. And the money is lent out in the form of a loan, so it comes back to the city over time. Although it's deferred and accrued for 20 years, it comes back to the city with interest over time, whereas most of the other uses of HUD money are grant-based, and so once they leave, you never get the money back. The other big advantage to us is that staff time can be direct charged to the projects, and so we'll talk about kind of the action plan tonight and how we plan to spend our HUD money, but you get a set aside for administrative costs, and it doesn't really fully subsidize the cost to administer the program, but when staff works on projects, you can what's called direct charge to the project, and so you're able to leverage additional administrative costs by using this program. So it actually is one of the more efficient uses that I've seen for federal money, because you get extra administrative reimbursement, but you also get the money back as program income. Welcome, Carmen.
Welcome, everybody.
So one of the ideas with really leveraging the program is that, people talk about HUD money going away in the future, and if that's the case, well, we have investments out with the public that will come back in the future as program income, and we can at least recycle that money and have somewhat of a sustainable program over time. Kathy, maybe you can talk about some of the demand, and one of the challenges we'll have once we really ramp up the program is marketing and making sure we have enough demand once the program's up and running again.
Well, as mentioned before, we have gone through quite a transition in the division and the NCIP program itself over the past few years. We have worked with some HUD experts and hired them to help us revamp our manual, our procedure manual. And we are going to be bringing that to council here in the next few months for review and approval. To date, in this fiscal year, we have completed 10 projects. 6 of those have been loan projects and 4 of those have been grant. The majority of those are accessibility. And we have probably about 4 or 5 projects in the pipeline that most likely will be funded for next fiscal year. We have kind of this past year taken a step back on marketing because of transition and didn't want to get overwhelmed with the onboard of the new staffing and the procedures. But our plan is, as in the past, to advertise in our annually in our Inside Santa Clara paper. We do, to be in compliance with HUD, do an annual call out for designers and contractors in a public newspaper such as Santa Clara Weekly. We do workshops at the Senior Center and the library. We collaborate with Silicon Valley Power for their rate assistance program because the guidelines and income limits are very similar. Actually, next Friday, we'll be participating at a booth at the Senior Center Be Well fair, and just do outreach through code enforcement and through flyers and so forth.
So sometimes if our code enforcement officers are out in the neighborhood and they might come across a home that's in really bad shape, and they can talk to the homeowners and say, hey, you know, you might want to, you know, check this program with the city and we can maybe help you get your home repaired.
Exactly, correct.
Communication that's so important, both high-tech communication and low-tech communication for the people that are interested in this program, because so many people don't know about the program and what's available, and especially a lot of senior citizens. And I think really outreach to many who have owned their properties for so many years and they're on fixed incomes and they just don't have the money to do the needed repairs. And I know you're talking about loans, but you also supply grants. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I should talk about that a little bit more because that was one of the changes to the program manual and kind of the process. So in the past, we essentially commingled the loan and the grant together in a project. And some items that were granted were, I would say, all of the soft costs, all of the design costs that go into a project were granted, and most of the hard costs would be in the form of a loan. So one of the changes we've made, because those costs add up, so when you look at the hard costs of a loan, say a scope of work is $50,000, well, we kind of went back and looked at the numbers, and you almost had to double that for the real cost. Yeah. By the time you add in contingency, by the time you add in all of the design cost, which are 20–25%, and then staff direct charging time, the total cost was almost double what the hard cost was. And that's kind of how we ran into the issue of running out of money on not enough projects. Because if you're taking in projects that are $100,000, all of a sudden that cost can be $200,000, and if you only have $400,000 in your budget, it's only a handful of projects. You can spend the money quickly. So one of the changes was to put all of the money as a loan. So we're essentially not granting much of it because it's deferred and accrued for 20 years. There's no payment required, and it's still a pretty good deal. And we're creating a new program for grants, but we're focusing the grant money on emergency repairs, and those are limited in scope. So I think in the manual, it's $5,000 or $10,000 for accessibility. And so we're using some of our city affordable housing money that's not HUD related for this program because it's much more efficient to administer. And with the emergency work, we have to respond very quickly. So we won't run into issues we've had in the past where when emergency work comes up and we start administering the money too early before you have all the HUD processes in place, and you can get yourself in trouble by kind of spending the money too early. So we've bifurcated the money in a way. So we're using city affordable money for grants, limiting it. I think we've asked for $100,000 in this budget, so we're thinking that can be 10 to 15 projects where we do emergency work, and then focusing everything else on the loan, kind of on the loan model, I would say. And we think we can get more projects in the pipeline that way.
So you're able to respond if someone needs a roof for those types of, through the grant process?
Hopefully same day. So Kathy would
Same
still
day.
do the same screening through the phone, but we think, yeah, within a day or two, we can accommodate that.
Okay, I like the flexibility of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Kathy, was there anything else you wanted to go through, or?
Oh, wrong Kathy.
Again, just emphasize, we're very excited about the future of the program with the revised manual, new staffing, the availability of the new grant program. We look forward to a really good future. Mhm.
Committee members? Carmen, you were late, so is there anything you'd like to tell us?
I am sorry, please excuse me for being late.
No, it's okay. You can eat now, okay.
I just, it's an honor to serve in this committee. I am also a person who applied for this, and so I am firsthand knowledge on how this program works, and have shared my opinion on how it works. And I am very honored to be able to help my community in helping them get their house up to par, because we see some pretty sad situations that doesn't come out into the public. And it's great to know that the city of Santa Clara is there for the community, you know, the silent community, especially our grandparents, our older aunts and uncles. I think we need to be very proud of that, and maybe even promote it more to see our accomplishments.
Bianca,
Not just
did
that
you
we
want-
offer it, but what we've accomplished.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I would like to see, you know, kind of an expansion of the accomplishments being projected to the city. I'm not sure how many residents know that this program even exists, whether or not they qualify for it. But the fact that the city in which they live has such a fantastic dynamic program. And, you know, I'm proud to work with two members of the committee that are recipients. Father Mike is as well. And so it really, to me, brings a really interesting perspective to hear how they've transitioned through the program and what have you. You know, further, I'm, I guess, the longest standing member of the committee now, sort of, you know, before Councilmember O'Neill, before Jonathan, before Andrew. So, you know, I would like to say that the direction in which the program is going is fantastic. You know, the fact that we were just speaking, Kathy and I earlier today, that we meet quarterly, and the quarterly schedule is such that with holidays and everything else, it can be difficult to arrange a time, but Kathy and the rest of the staff have really sort of narrowed it down so it makes a little bit more sense on how we're meeting, and that we're able to address projects, you know, quickly. So I can say absolutely, it's been a pleasure to work with these folks.
I just want to thank both of you for serving, and you both bring such a great perspective to the committee. And Carmen, by going through the process, you know what it's like and where it needs to improve, and I know your input is valuable. And Bianca, you know, thank you for bringing energy too, also to the committee. You're absolutely right. I have to be frank, before I served as a member of the committee back in the 90s, I didn't know about it. And I was really involved in the city, but I really didn't know about all the good things that this committee does. I think one of you said it's like a silent committee. Your accomplishments that we don't really talk about, but it really helps. And, you know, a lot of times it's, I'm being a slightly dramatic, but it's almost life and death situations for people, and the way they live and their quality of life, and the properties that they live in, and the condition, and sometimes the absolute squalor and the terrible conditions of the property, because they didn't know what to do. In many cases, they didn't know how to reach out and ask for help. And, you know, somehow they found out about the program. And I know at the time I was there, we had a lot of grants and other loans that were just so valuable for people now, especially nowadays. But I know Teresa has been keeping us informed as to what's happening in the committee, and the redoing of the structure of the committee and the work that the committee does. I think it was absolutely necessary, and it's very promising that it's really going to be streamlined, and again, a lot of new energy into this committee. And I think, Kathy, you have a wonderful job ahead of you of communicating this to our public, and whether it's, you know, testimony from our committee members as to, you know, what's available out there and how it's helped people. I think we need to get that out more. I think we're going to put that on our to-do list. how we advertise, you know, the good things. The problem with Santa Clara a lot of times is we talk about the negative things all the time, but in this case, it's such a positive program and, you know, something we should be very proud of. So thank you all for that.
And I was just curious, Carlos, have you had a chance to go out and work with clients yet? Or maybe you could, if you have any initial impressions of working with the clients?
Yeah, I've gone out to help a few clients. Some are there in the middle of, you know, getting their work done. So some in the beginning and some in the middle, so it's been a kind of good experience. And I've enjoyed working with a lot of them. A lot of them were elderly clients, whereas in the past, in other projects I've worked on, I've been working on CDI projects and working with developers. So it's nice to work with the community directly with some of the elderly folks and that.
Yeah, because I know like some of the things we've seen is like, I think as the mayor alluded to, sometimes people get in a situation and they don't really know how to get themselves out. And, you know, what we're seeing a lot of is like, you know, like older parents that a number of them have like disabled children or children with, you know, serious mental illness or something like that. So it's even kind of a more desperate situation. And we've had clients recently that didn't have like operating bathrooms in their house. And, you know, so that's why I'm a huge believer that, you know, we really need to make sure that we, however we can to find money to invest in our own community and to make sure that we're, you know, doing what we can to take care of you know, our residents, you know, people who, you know, one of the things you know, yeah, they're very vulnerable and, you know, sometimes they have these fairly good-sized houses, and they're just like now moving and living in smaller and smaller parts of the house because as other parts of the house become out of repair or the roof has been leaking, and so they can't live in that, it can't be in that room. Yeah, there's mildew. I mean, if you guys could see some of the photographs, it's pretty grim.
Yeah, I did have some questions, and thank you for these visuals, because I recognize some of the outcomes of some of those projects, and it's really quite amazing. Do you typically get more requests than you have budgeted funds for? And if so, how do you make a selection? What's the average size of your loan? And what's the average wait time before we get, I know they're 20 years loans, but as you're dealing with an older population, I'm assuming that when the house is transferred or sold, you get repaid. So does that shorten the time in which the city gets repaid?
The loan is repaid either in default of the loan. Sometimes people will move and rent out their home, or it's also due upon death of the borrower, transfer of title. The majority of our loans average, I'd say probably about $30,000 would be a good number. And it really all depends. We have everything from foundation repair in certain parts of the city to bathroom remodels. Some of the accessibility we do can be as major that we can't cover under a grant, but it's widespread, and that's what we try to convey in the pictures. Yeah.
And so, but what is the average timeline before getting repaid? Because they are due on transfer, I know.
Well, again, as you mentioned and Jonathan mentioned, our loans are for 20 years, 3% simple, no payment required. I would say probably about 20% actually go to maturity, especially now. We're getting a large turnover. A lot of people are moving. A lot of people are selling their homes due to the market. And we've received, gosh, probably on average $800,000 or so, just so far to date this fiscal year in repayments.
And then how do you make a selection if you have more requests than funds available?
Well, last year when we had limited funding, we had a waiting list. And then when we had funds, we contacted those people in priority order. And some of them continued, some of them didn't. They found ways by other means. But our process is it's first come, first serve. And we will determine once they're eligible, we will have Carlos go out and do an initial inspection, decide on the scope of work. If we can provide a grant, it's pretty quick. But the loan, I think the challenging part is the meetings that we have for the committee are quarterly. So if we have a meeting, for instance, this Thursday, which is our next quarterly meeting, we have a client next week who qualifies and needs a loan, they have to wait until August, till the next meeting for review and approval by the committee. So
asking for
that
more
would be,
meetings?
I think right now our biggest challenge. I think, other than that, once they are approved, it's depending on the scope, bidding, contracting, yeah. Our
Kathy,
projects.
could you
Yeah.
elaborate to it? There is some review of scope. You mentioned where sometimes people maybe start throwing in the, it would be nice if I could do this as well type items on top of the, so could you speak to that a little bit?
Certainly. Past practice and when we had different funding, when both of the grants, CDBG and home, our scopes tend to be larger. Now, we are concentrating more on just the necessities. Our priorities are health and safety code, and we are tending less to do the wants rather than the necessities. That will allow us to provide a smaller amount in loan and help more people. Yeah.
I think that's good just to add. Last year when we had limited funding, as you mentioned, it's on a first come, first served basis, but we would review to see if there were high priority projects with emergency needs. And if they fit kind of the prioritized scope that's in the program manual, we would push those forward. And we'd present them to the committee as well to see if they warrant that. And on the loan repayment, my guess is that in the past, you probably had more loans that were going to maturity, but because of the market dynamic here, a lot of the homes are being sold before the 20 years, and they're repaid on sale. But also, one of the changes to the process or the program is the owner occupancy compliance and monitoring. So what we found were that a lot of homeowners would maybe not be living there, but title is still in their name, and they're able to rent out the unit at a high rent. And so that's not allowed in the program. And so we've made a focus to do a better job on owner occupancy compliance with sending out letters and making sure they reply. And Kathy has other methods to check whether they're occupying the home or not. And what we've seen is a lot of repayments once we've I don't know if you have a number in your head, but there were quite a few that repaid once we started implementing that process.
I would like to add real quick, elaborate more. If we have a client that comes to us in an emergency situation and it's more than the grant allowed, we do have the ability, division manager approval of a $15,000 emergency loan. So those particular situations would not have to wait until the next committee, and that's benefited a few of our clients.
Kathy?
Yes, I did just want to share. On Saturday, I attended a roundtable with representatives from the Bay Area cities and also the county destination home, downtown streets, and there was a representative, another representative from another group, Silicon Valley at Home. Yep, thank you, Teresa. That's right, you were watching. Were you watching? and the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. But it was really informative. The congressman, was just obviously very concerned about, the affordable housing in the area. And but there was a representative from HUD there as well. And he talked, he almost seemed a little bit guilty, but he really talked about, the importance of adding money, finding more monies for the CDBG grants, as well as, HUD funding, having those monies available to just make sure that, affordable housing is a priority in the area. So it was 2 hours. It was really informative, and he was taking a lot of notes. So hopefully he'll get some money out of Washington to send our way.
We'll wait for that check.
There you go.
Okay, good.
Because we know the president loves us.
Yeah, okay. Debbie, do you have anything to add?
No, Kathy,
Can you speak in your, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have long legs, I like to sit back.
I just had one question for you, Kath, for marketing, because I just love marketing. Have you ever thought of having an event maybe at the senior center and bring people in and do like a little mini seminar and kind of speak to them and let them know what they can get just like a little flyer or whatever, and just kind of walk them through it so that if an emergency does arise, they know how to get to somebody quickly, because it sounds like they know how to get you, but I think there's a communication issue somewhere in the city, because I know people, I didn't know about it, I knew about it through Carmen. That's how I knew, because she went through the program, other than I did not know it myself.
Sure.
So, even though I'm a baby boomer and I'm not there yet, but we have, at-risk residents out there. So I was thinking the senior center only because they always come up with something that happens immediately, and they get nervous, they don't know who to contact, they don't know who to trust. So I was hoping that maybe we could kind of do that in a marketing thing, or put a flyer out and be maybe a little bit more proactive. If, Carlos, I know you're new and you're out there, but if you see something that doesn't look right to you, like a welfare check that the police department do, they kind of go out and visit to see if people are okay. So I don't know if that's a proactive thing you can also do within the city. I don't know if you have time. I know you just established this new system, but sometimes proactive helps if you see something that doesn't look right to you.
Yeah, we've also, well, in the past, I've worked with Catholic Charities and other
Oh, okay.
nonprofits that are already case managers working with seniors.
And they can alert you?
Yeah, and they can refer once they know we have a program. So if we go out and make contact to those kind of establishments and stuff, I think that would help. Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that we did with the needs assessment, and how we would communicate with our elderly population that needs assistance, and how do we get information out to them, so.
Yes, we have had several workshops in the past at the senior center, as well as the library, and we will be at the senior center wellness fair next Friday. And we do work closely with Mallory over at the senior center, and as well as the police department and with our code enforcement. But thank you. Yes, we're going to start implementing more of those seminars and events now that we have fully staffed and more funding.
I know.
Yeah.
Those are good suggestions. I'm going to ask the committee members if there's anything that they would like to tell us about what we can do to help you in your job as a committee member, how we can do a better job assisting you. If you have anything that comes to mind, or where you see a need that.
I guess just help get the word out. And I think is when you're out there, knocking on doors, going to all these events, let your people there know we're there. Maybe they know of a person who really needs some assistance. I know it can be very intimidating. Those application forms are very intimidating, especially for older people on a limited budget. They are thinking, oh my God, I'm getting into debt. I'm getting into debt. And, how do we ease that? That he says like, well, your roof is caving in, or you have no toilet. You really need assistance for your health. It's more of a safety issue than a luxury issue. So yeah, for me, it would just help us get the word out. How do we market this?
All right, it's good, very good, thank you. Bianca?
I remember a couple of years ago at a council meeting, or several council meetings, that there was a small forum that was allowed for committee members to speak and present to perhaps the public or even council that wasn't aware of the program. So perhaps allowing at a future meeting, a 5-minute window, what have you, just to advertise the program, if you will. It might reach a larger audience. I know that with the senior grants and things like that, but it might reach a larger audience that would be appropriate for the program.
I like that idea.
So we can put you on, we do that with the Cultural Commission I think once a month.
Once a month we do that.
They come and they tell us what's happening. I think we can put you on at least a regular schedule. So if you work with our staff to get a time, and then you can come under special order of business at the beginning of the meeting and talk about the program, because it would reach a larger audience. We think people are watching us. We're pretty sure there's some people watching us.
I think there are a few
So,
people watching.
Yeah.
And
So,
a dynamic presentation like this really speaks volumes.
Oh, it
as you
really
folks have already
does.
said.
Visuals are
The
wonderful.
before and after just just outstanding. It really speaks to what the work that we do in this program, so.
And you know, maybe even bringing someone who's gone through the program to talk about it.
Testimonials.
And to really talk about the fact that it's a great program and it's run by the city professionally, and people can feel safe coming in and applying for the program. And there's a lot of help, even with the long application process and others. So just someone who's gone through the program, that would be even speak volumes as well. So just let us know when you're available and want to be on the agenda. I think that's a great idea. Okay, anyone else? Because they're kicking us out in 2 minutes, so. Teresa, would you like to wrap us up?
Well,
Since
I
you're
just
the
hope
chair
that
of this committee.
I want to thank Bianca and Carmen for coming this evening, and for the members of the staff, and it's nice to get a chance for us to introduce Eric and Carlos. And, like I said, I hope that would be, particularly now we've got Eric, that we've got some projects out, some, requests for information out there, some city-owned land that hopefully will be building some more housing for people in Santa Clara, affordable housing, and by increasing this program and our tenant-based rental assistant, that, I really am very hopeful about us being able to expand the portfolio of housing and community services that we're able to offer to our community. So thank you to everybody.
Very good, thank you all. Thank you all for coming and joining us, and thanks for sharing everything. And for your